All right, welcome again, everybody. My name is Daniel Joram. I'm the West Coast sales manager here for Nobletech in the US. And with me in our chat is Lucas from our technical support department. Folks have emailed in. They may have gotten a response back from Lucas. So the format of this morning's webinar, or afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at, is going to be a little bit of conversation on our user interface, how to purchase and display charts, how to download charts, how to download weather, how to create basic user objects, marks, tracks, routes, catches, how to use our trips feature. And we'll talk about some of the other advanced integration, like our AIS module, if you're connecting to some of the instruments on board your boat, how to purchase our premium weather model, or premium weather service, rather, with access to a couple of different weather models. We'll talk about our anchor watch alarm. And then at the end, I'll show a little video on integration with the DRS-4W radar from Furuno. One of the things that to kind of start out with is, TZ iBoat is a companion and makes a great companion to our PC chart plotter programs, either Time Zero Navigator or Time Zero Professional, or with the current generation of Furuno multifunction displays. The integration between those two products is pretty seamless. And it's also, able to connect to a host of Wi-Fi gateways for getting, ship's data, wind, waves, stuff like that, and heading, course over ground, speed over ground, things like that. The other thing to note is it is totally usable without an internet connection. Just make sure that you follow a couple of basic steps, and we'll talk about those to make sure that your system's working while underway and away from Wi-Fi. So downloading your charts ahead of time for your entire trip, and then also, making sure that your position information isn't solely relying on Wi-Fi. And then we'll talk about ties and currents and sort of other advanced setup, and then we'll open it up for questions. So to start with, if you've used any of our other products, the user interface should be fairly straightforward and very similar to Time Zero Navigator or our work with Furuno on the MFDs. To zoom in and out, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pinch and zoom in and zoom out. We also have these little buttons here if you're wearing gloves or have it in a waterproof case to zoom in and zoom out. This little button up here at the top, blue one with the arrow, that's going to do a couple of things. It's going to center the boat, but if I tap it again, that'll put it into sort of a heads up mode. Tap it one more time, and it gets back to our regular north up display. On the right hand side of the screen, you'll see a couple of buttons. So the first button is our layer button, and that's where we're going to turn on and off various different charts and overlays. So right now I'm on the basic land map that we include for free when you sign up for TZ iBoat. We can also switch over to raster charts. And raster charts are available here in the US, Canada, select parts of Europe, and then our vector charts, and these are all coming from CMAP. I see a small difference between the charts here and maybe if you're using like a Navionics that has some of the shaded relief. Everybody's doing sort of extra stuff, and so you may see some differences between programs with, some people are bringing in community data and other stuff. Below that, there's a little tooltip button. So this is a quick way to create an event, use our ruler, or start our anchor watch feature. The ruler is pretty simple. Tap on the ruler icon, and then you drag both ends around, and you can measure. You'll see it displayed up there at the top. The other thing you can do is create an event. So we've got a couple of different kinds of events that we can use. So we allow you to either take a picture or import one from your photo library. And this is pretty useful if you're, say, coming into an anchorage and you want to remember kind of where like what a harbor entrance looks like. You'll be able to kind of have that as a reminder of if you're coming into some place, you can take a picture of a buoy. Maybe you're on your skiff at low tide and you kind of get a good idea of what the rocks and stuff look like. You can snap a photo of that and it'll show up right in the chart. We can also drop other marks just by tapping on the chart. And then we've got our basic mark icon. With the events, you can, have maybe a favorite anchorage, or if you see a hazard or something, those are what those other 3 buttons are for. And then we've got options for the catch feature, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth when we talk about trips. If you're connected to a boat's Wi-Fi network that has NMEA information, if you slide over from the right-hand side of the screen, that's where you can display everything. So I'm connected to a little simulation or recording that I did this summer. And so you'll see I've got depth coming in, speed over ground, sea surface temperature coming in from that transducer, my position. And if I want to configure any of that stuff, I can just hit add. And then it'll kind of give me a list of different bits of information that I'll be able to add in. So if I wanted, say, apparent wind speed, so I've got a thermometer on the boat, I can bring that in. If I want to move stuff around, I can do that as well. Just add one more, for example, and just hold down on it and I can drag it up to the top to reorder stuff. And then lastly, our TZ button here at the top, this is going to get you to our menu. So you've got a list of your marks and icons, a list of your trips, access to our store, our settings, and a couple of different quick actions. If you need to, for example, add a latitude and longitude, somebody gives it to you, or you're hearing something over the radio and you want to add that, that's a quick button to be able to add all those things by lat and long. And that's the basic user interface. So the next thing we want to talk about is how do you get charts on a TZ iBoat? So if you go back to our store, so click here and then click our store button. This is going to bring up a couple of things. So the first option is vector charts, raster charts, premium weather, our radar and AIS module, and then it'll show you what you've purchased already. So if I click on my purchases, you'll see that I've already purchased the AIS module and the radar module. It shows that I did have a weather subscription, but that expired. And then what charts that I've already purchased that need to be renewed, and then what charts that are current. Those will show up in the green checkbox. So if I go back to the store and I click on vector charts and I go to Americas, let's say that we want to plan a trip going down to Workboat next week. So I want to take a look at some of the areas down around New Orleans. So what I can do is I can hit subscribe, and it's going to tell me how much it's going to be a year, the area that's going to cover. Click on subscribe one more time, and it might ask you to put your iTunes password in if you haven't done so recently, and then it will subscribe. And there we go. Once that's done, it'll take a couple of minutes and it will sort of sync that to your account. You can go back to our then you can load charts in one of two ways. So the easiest way to load a chart is you can just pinch and zoom in, and it'll just start streaming. Or you can go to our offline charts and weather, and you can kind of zoom out. And right now I'm on weather. But if I switched over to vector chart, it's going to show me all of the different chart areas that I want to get. As I zoom out, those squares get bigger, so there's less of them to tap. And you'll see sort of along the bottom how much free space you have left on your iPad, as well as what's being downloaded. That's really important. You know, if you're planning somewhere and you're going to be getting on a boat and you're not going to have internet access once you're there, you want to make sure that you do have the charts downloaded for the area. Zoom out here up to the northwest, you'll see the difference. So the gray shaded area is what I don't have purchased yet. The area that is a little bit less shaded is going to be stuff that I have purchased but not yet downloaded. And then the sort of bright area is going to be what is purchased and downloaded. And I can do the same thing for raster charts. You'll see, you know, what I have downloaded and then what I have access to. So we'll head back to home here. And like I was saying earlier, if you want to switch between the various different chart types, so again, click on that little layers button and you'll see that you can switch between vector charts, raster charts, and our basic OpenStreetMap. And one of the things that I find is like a sort of really, really awesome feature while we're cruising is the OpenStreetMaps, and I'll show you why. I like to go hiking while we're out cruising, especially up here in the San Juans and the Gulf Islands in Canada. There's lots of great stuff. And you'll see sort of highlighted on each one of these little OpenStreetMap charts where all the parks are. And so you'll see like one of my favorite places, Winter Cove, to go to. It's going to show you the park boundaries. You get a good idea of what's public and what's private. And then within that, it's going to actually show you those hiking trails. And so that's a really, I think it's a fantastic feature that comes basic and free with the software. One pro tip, if you are planning a hike and you're telling people how far it is, make sure you switch the units from nautical miles to regular land miles. That can get a little frustrating if you're out for a hike and it's, 10% longer than you thought it was going to be. Not that I've done that. Anyway, going back to where we're at. So again, just hit that button and you can switch between your raster charts and your vector charts. We also include free satellite photos, so you can click on the satellite photo there, and that's going to stream high resolution satellite photos where we have them available. You'll find that in places like Canada and Alaska, where our satellite photo coverage in the past had been a little out of date or poor, we'll have much better satellite photos now that we have that streaming access. If you want to turn on a grid, you can do that with those grid lines. Let's see here, and then just kind of going down the list here. So if I want to turn on weather, so I can click on the wind information, and it's going to give me an option to subscribe to our different weather models. It's going to tell me what I have, and it's going to give you a little bit of information about it. So we're going to hit renew, and hopefully it doesn't make me put my password in again. Oh. So now when I toggle through my weather forecast, I'll have a couple of different options there, and we can take a look at those. So right now I'm just displaying basic wind information. If I want, I can, when I zoom out here, you'll see a little bit better. I can do wind and maybe barometric pressure. I'll do pressure lines. I can animate through that either by dragging the time bar at the bottom, or when I hit done, I'll also get an option for a play button. One other feature that's really useful, if I click over on the right-hand side, this little meteogram pops up. So that's going to give me a forecast for my area and my position. If you want to look at a forecast for somewhere else, just drag that little dot to somewhere else. All right. Hide it there. We can also look at wave information. Depending on where you're at and which weather model you have will dictate what you can see for wave set. The GFS model, for example, doesn't come into Puget Sound or up into the Canadian Gulf Islands. So depending on where you're at, you may see different areas of coverage. I can also look at air temperature. I can look at cloud cover and precipitation, and then I can look at oceanographic currents. So if you like to fish, this is a phenomenal bit of information right in the palm of your hand. You know, I've got TZ iBoat, I've got TZ Professional and an MFD on the boat, and it's surprising now how much, you know, if I want just a quick bit of information about a forecast, I'll just pull the phone up, whether I'm cruising or sailing or if I'm just at home, and it makes a really powerful weather tool right in your pocket. Double click to turn it off. You also have a little bit of customization depending on what presentation mode you like. If you want the, like right now, I've got particle animation along with our colors, but if I just want to have, you know, particles in color, or maybe I want to just switch to like a basic sort of grid display, a little bit less cluttered, a little bit less busy, you can do that. I can also click on labels and it'll give me wind speed information. And so there's lots of different displays combinations that you can do. It's really versatile there. A little bit with the different weather models. If I switch over to DWD icon, so that's going to be a global coverage again. And then up here in North America, we've got the NAM-CONUS model. And you'll see as that refreshes, it's going to be a little bit limited. If you see that sort of area that the weather forecast is kind of cropped off, that's just showing you that that's the bounds of your forecast. So there's nothing wrong with the program. That's just where, you know, that weather model shows. If I switch over to Europe, you'll see that we get a couple of different model options now. So we've got the icon model, we have an icon EU model, and then again, that kind of clips where those edges of the forecast are. And then arpege and arome are going to be different resolution in different areas, depending on what you look at. Next down the list is going to be a couple of things. So we'll look at ownership trail. So that's our sort of always recording track. We can turn tracks on and off, but we also have this great trail feature that kind of shows you where you've been. There's a question in the comment there about looking at tide and current information for sort of going forward. If I click on, you know, show tidal currents, and I just drag that time bar across the bottom, you'll be able to get current information further ahead. If I open up my nav data, you'll see that I've got one of our tide and current nav data boxes there. So it's tide height with a little current arrow on it. As I advance this, it's going to kind of move ahead in the future there. And further down within the layer tool, I can switch over to tide height stations. Anytime you've got either a weather forecast or a tidal station or a current station displayed, our little our time bar at the bottom is going to automatically pop up. So if you are trying to go ahead in the future, you'll see that there. If it's missing, you just need to turn one of those other settings, either tide and current or weather on. This one here, AIS targets. So I've got an AIS transponder on the boat. It's tied into my nav system. I can be able to see all those targets. I can click on one of those guys. Tells me what it is, where it's going, and then I can turn on this little graphic CPA tool. By default on TZ iBoat, we do not turn that on like we do on Time Zero Professional or Time Zero Navigator. Given the small screen size, we don't want it to clutter up too much. We also can do some boundary areas. If you're looking at sort of fishing and there's some closure areas, you can plot those in if you want. And then I'll show you our catches and our photos there at the bottom. So our catch icon is this little fish. So there's a salmon I caught and puts in information on it. There was that picture that I added earlier. And so those are kind of our basic user objects. You can get to those also from our list. So if I click on the TZ button again, I go to list and search, I can just see a list of all my marks and where they are. All right, so the other thing that we brought out is our trip feature. So a trip feature does a couple of things. It records a track for you, but I can also go in and hit start. You'll see that one of the options that popped up there, and I'm just going to do this again. Save that little trip, is live feature. So we have the ability to share our trips live. So you can record them for yourselves, but you can also share them if you have friends and family that want to know where you're going. They can find that are using TZ iBoat. They just search for your username and you can add them as a friend and they can follow you and you can follow them. And so you'll be able to see, kind of where your buddies are if they've got this feature turned on. It does require an internet connection to have it fully live. But when it does that, if anybody's friends with my test account, they'll get a notification that I'm doing this demo and they can follow along. And then you'll also see a little bit of information across the bottom on how far you've gone, how long it's been, what your speed is, and things like that. So we'll just kind of let that run in the background. If I make a mark or a catch or add a photo, all those will kind of get bundled with that trip. And if I, click on and make a new route, so I've just clicked on the chart, selected new route, and I can kind of go through and complete. Now, in addition to the information that I had on the trip, I'll also have some information up here on the top with distance to arrival, ETA, and if I want any more information, I can kind of configure all those nav data to show and hide various bits of information. Once you're done with your trip, you can go in and you can name it. You can give it a little bit of a description. You can change the privacy settings. You can add some other photos. You can look at departure, arrival information. And then when I go in sort of to our trip list, you'll be able to scroll through and see, that I was doing, a little, some of the other stuff. And you'll see that on this particular trip, I had logged a catch with a photo. So that's going to be in there as well. That's a great comment about the tide and currents. Yeah, Jeff, that is not a feature we have right now, but I'll definitely take a note and give it to our developers. That's something that we do offer in our PC program, but unfortunately, that's not something that we do on our iPad app or our iOS app. All right. So we talked a little bit about free weather download and our premium weather. So let's talk about our Anchor Watch alarm. And I'm just going to switch this demo that's running on my computer over. So we'll see a little jump in our position here. So don't mind that. So we have a really, really awesome Anchor Watch feature. And if you haven't had a chance to check this out yet, to start with it, you just double tap on the, or single tap on the little 3 dots there, hit Anchor Watch, and then you have your choice. If you're hooked up to a GPS unit, just use the GPS position of your boat. If you don't have a GPS hooked up, you can just tell by pointing your phone at the basically where you anchored, and then giving it a distance there. So now that that's running, you'll see a little circle. I can click on it and I can click edit. So if I need to move where the anchor was, I can do that. I can also, increase or decrease the Anchor Watch size. You'll see that there's a little orange dashed line, and that's our warning area. So we'll get a warning zone or warning alarm, and then we'll get a Anchor Watch alarm if we drag past that. One of the biggest features about this is if you have a couple of different devices. So let's say you have an iPad with a cell connection, or it's hooked into your bigger boat network that's got an internet connection. Maybe you have a Starlink on your boat. You can set this up to report your position to the cloud. So what I'm going to do is click on TZ iBoat, look at my account, and you'll see that I've got both cloud synchronization and position reporting. And what the position reporting is going to do is it's going to send your boat's position, depth if you've got a depth sounder hooked up, wind speed if you've got wind hooked up, and it will send all that stuff to our cloud server. And then our cloud server has a way to log in and look at your Anchor Watch online. So if you've got, let's say you've got an iPad on the boat, but you have an Android phone and you want to see where your boat's at, you can log in via your Android phone. You can log in via a web browser. You can also have it set up to text message, and we'll go through that. If you've got a GPS position on a NEMA 2000 network, we can connect to that with a couple of different gateways. So the ActiSense W2K1 as a translation mode where it will basically translate from 0183 or from NMEA 2000 to NMEA 0183, and you'll get position, and that's essentially similar to what I'm seeing with all of the nav data that I have here. You can also use products from Digital Yachts. If you had a Vesper AIS, that'll do the translation. If you've got a Furuno multifunction display, that will translate all of its nav data and put it out over Wi-Fi. I think I haven't tested a Bad Elf in a number of years, but I believe those are still compatible. Lucas would actually have a better answer on that one, I think. And then any of the other gateways. So, like a lot of the AIS manufacturers, AMEC, MTech, ACR, and then I know the B&G system has their Go Free Wi-Fi. It will you can pull in nav data from the BNG or Navico Go free systems. I've done that on a number of sailboats that have those. Yeah, so the only reason I wanted to clarify is that TZ iBoat is not directly compatible yet with NMEA PGN sentences. It's only compatible with 0183. But yeah, if you're connected to a system, I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So if you have a Wi-Fi gateway that's connected to your iPad or your iPhone, go under settings and we'll do initial setup. And then there's an option for enable NMEA gateway. You would just, put in the port number and you'll see all of your data scrolling through there. Since I'm running a demo, it's a little bit different. One of the new features that we have now that has previously been unavailable is our pilot configuration. And this is actually pretty awesome. So it does two things for you. It allows you to build a route on your iPad or your iPhone, connect to a compatible gateway. The two that we've tested the most are the digital yachts. I want to say like the Navlink 2, and then I tested this summer the ActiSense W2K1. And that's going to be able to output pilot sentences. So you can build a route on your iPad, hit navigate, and it'll drive your autopilot. If you're not a fan of nav mode on your autopilot, the other really nice thing that this does is it allows you to output to a deck display. So let's say, you're on a small sailboat and you don't really care about looking at the plotter the whole time, but you want to have bearing to waypoint information for your route. You can just leave the iPad down below, output it to your Wi-Fi network, and now you'll get distance to waypoint and bearing to waypoint on your little like 4-inch deck displays. And I think as much as I like the autopilot output and control, being able to output to a little physical display, I think is really, really cool. And there's some great YouTube videos on this on our YouTube channel. Where our CTO is going through setting one of those up and demonstrating it live on our test boat here in Portland. So, with that, let me hop over to our cloud account. So let's see here. So here is our cloud account. So if you aren't familiar with it, this is cloud.mytimezero.com. And maybe Lucas can throw that in the chat for us. And this is going to give you a basic, web interface. It's going to look really similar. You can click on that and you can turn on NOAA ENC overlay. So we used to have raster charts on here, but NOAA discontinued that. You'll see that my anchor watch is safe. I can hover over the boat and take a look at it. If I click on our little TZ icon there, you'll see a list of user objects, so photos, catches, marks, routes. You'll see if you've got signed up to our fleet tracking service, you would see that. You'll see your friends. But if I click on Anchor Watch, this is where I can set up both our email notification and our text message notification, and then set, how many event notifications you want to get within a very short time period. So we give you for free 10 text messages a month. It costs us a little bit to send them. And that's why you'll see that remaining SMS there. And so usually what I do is I put warning by email. If you want a notification if somebody on your boat shuts off your anchor watch, you can do that as well. I also do a disconnected anchor watch. So if for some reason the internet connection on the boat goes down or the battery on the iPad dies, I get a notification that we haven't talked to our cloud service in a while. And you'll see that will change there. Once you have all that stuff put in, you can just hit text and it will send you a text message to the phone number you put in, but also it'll send you an email to the email address that's listed in that account. You also have a couple of other changes here to your distances, units, and things like that. Let's see here. To stop the anchor watch, just double click on that. And you can turn off the anchor watch there, or you can hit the little stop hand at the top of the screen. And we'll hit yes. As I mentioned, we've got a kind of cool thing if you like to fish. So we've got the ability to create what we call a catch user object. So again, click on those little three buttons, create an event, and we'll hit catch. And you have the ability to put in a length. And then I can either take a photo, or if I have a photo that's saved, go. And you can pick a species from our list there. You'll be able to go through and view those later. And you can also see those in our cloud account when you're signed in. So it's a great way to show, kind of mark where your good fishing spots are, and save those for later. All right, we talked a little bit about AIS integration. We'll just go over that a little bit more. So again, fully compatible with, you know, a host of different AIS receivers and transponders. By our default settings, we've got blue is going to be our class A, you know, usually commercial targets or large private vessels. Class B is going to be the green icons on the screen. If I click on one of these, I'll be able to get the name, the MMSI number, the vessel's course and speed, what it is, pleasure craft, if it, you know, if it has a heading sensor turned up, hook up to it, it's going to display heading, you know, and it should tell you sort of where it's going. I can also then, you know, like I said, turn on our CPA, which is going to give us our sort of closest point of approach there. If I'm looking for a specific boat, I can go to the time zero icon, go to list and search, and I can go to AIS targets. And so I can scroll through depending on, you know, if I've highlighted somebody as a threat, I can search by name. Search by speed over ground. I can search by CPA. I can search, or closest point of approach. I can search by time to closest point of approach. Also, just type in a name and search for it. So if I'm looking for a buddy, I can see that, you know, these guys are anchored down here as well. And then once I do that, I've got a little bit more information on them. And I guess lastly, we'll just kind of go through the rest of the menu. So there's a big settings menu here. And depending on what you're trying to do, so this is one that I always recommend, which is prevent auto lock. Turn that on if you want to, you know, just leave your iPad going. I do that while I'm asleep because my iPad serves as my anchor watch alarm, so it's going to be right next to me. And you can make changes to your course over ground predictor. So that's that little dashed red line. Right now I have it by 2 minutes, but I can also, you know, change that to, let's say, 30 minutes or decrease that. So that's going to vary by, you know, by boat speed, but I could also switch that to, you know, if I just want to have it by distance. So it's always going to be 1 mile away. So depending on what you like, you can configure that. You can make some trail changes to the trail thickness as well. Under alarms, this is where you can configure a bunch of different alarms. If you just want it to flash across the top of the screen, turn those two off. If you want it to make a noise, and then enunciate, which is actually going to tell you that it's an anchor watch alarm or a depth alarm, depending on what its alarm is triggered. With our routes, you can sort and how, when we collapse a route, you'll see that it's back down to that little button, just that little arrow there. If I go over back to my settings under routes, I can change whether it's shown by where the route starts or where the route ends. So depending on what you want to see, you'll see it either start or at the end. You can change the route color. You can turn on labels if you want. Route auto zoom is going to be, when you get to the next waypoint, it's going to kind of zoom the chart plotter or the iPad to the same area. Waypoint switching. So we can do circle, we can do cross line. And so that just basically means you've got to get within the arrival circle of the waypoint, or you have to be perpendicular to the waypoint if you're outside of it. One little trick, if you want a never-ending waypoint, so let's say you're diving on a wreck or something like that, and you hit go to, if you just do a circle and then you make the radius 0 for where it says switching radius circle or switching circle radius, that'll let you basically have a never-ending waypoint that you would just have to stop when you're done. Let's see here. You can change your default mark color and symbol. Some basic changes on your plotter display. So if you want to switch through, day or dusk mode, depending on what your presentation is, leave it in automatic mode and it'll just kind of cycle through that during the night. Which weather model you want. For kind of advanced systems, ocean crossings, things like that, we actually have the ability to directly connect to an Iridium Go. So if you're doing an offshore race and you've got a small boat and an Iridium and an iPad, you'll be able to still download weather, which is pretty cool. We had one of our users do a stand-up paddleboard trip through the Northwest Passage in Canada this year, and was using his Iridium in our service to do that. Radar connection. The Fruno DRS-4W radar is pretty basic, so there's a couple of settings: transparency, rain mode, things like that. A little bit on targets. To change the target predictor time, you can do the same thing. You can go by time or you can go by distance. I believe it should be the same. Yeah, so if you change the course predictor or course over ground predictor for either the targets or your own ship, it's going to change them globally so that the distances make sense. Question there, Jeff. Let's see here. Units, if you want to change between nautical miles and kilometers, feet to fathoms, things like that. I already kind of walked you through our initial setup there as well. All right. So with that, that's the basic stuff I wanted to talk about. I'm going to stop the share here and go grab that TZ iBoat and Fruno radar video so I can show everybody that real quick. So this is a live recording that I did on my own boat. This is the DRS-4W radar with AIS targets. I do have in this video, I have a heading sensor connected. So I've got full radar overlay. And for what it is and the price, it's a phenomenal radar. It's a great piece of kit for a boat. It's a great backup. If you want something that's a little bit less expensive than another, full radar system. And, it's pretty unique in the market to, we're the only ones that are doing this kind of overlay. And yeah, it's pretty simple to set up, pretty straightforward. With the DRS connections, there is instructions. You need to connect the iPad to the radar, and then you also need to connect your NMEA gateway to the radar. It's a little bit different. The radar only works as an access point. It doesn't work as a client for another network. And then there is a limitation of, I think, 2 devices connected to the radar at any time. One question that comes up a lot when we're talking about radars is, if I have a Fruno radar connected to my NavNet system, can I see that radar on the iPad? And unfortunately, the answer is no, it does not work. But for what it is, again, it's I want to say it's right around $1,000 for the radar. You still got to run power to it, but you can overlay it on our software or just use it as a standalone radar in the Fruno app. All right, so that answers that question. Let me go back to our iPad, and we'll talk about the difference between vector charts and raster charts. So vector charts are sort of a digital representation of the chart data. They allow you to manipulate the chart in a lot of different ways because it's just data. So you can turn on and off various features of the chart. Raster charts are essentially just photos, and that's what I have displayed here. So this is a photo of our raster chart. If I switch between sort of north up and then heads up mode, you'll see that all of the numbers and everything rotate and do not stay sort of heads up, because all of these are printed on that chart in north up. So that's kind of the big difference, is that this is just a picture, and you'll see that, as the density of depth shading information changes from one essentially chart line to the other, we don't add or subtract any other information. If I switch over to vector charts now, you'll see that as I rotate between north up and heads up mode, the text on that all stays sort of at the top of the screen. And then if I go into our settings here and I go into vector chart, I can do a bunch of different stuff. So I can change the size of the text and the icons on there to make it, either less cluttered or easier to see. I can go in and I can change the chart color palette. Again, make it a couple of different displays, make it easier to see in bright sunlight with that sunlight mode. I can change the icons, whether I want to use an international symbol or sort of the standard S52 symbol. And so it allows a lot of sort of manipulation of the chart itself. The other big thing I can do, I can go in and I can change my safety contours in here. So depending on what the draft of the vessel I'm on. And so it just really allows for a lot of configuration on these charts. And as Lucas helpfully threw in there, we do have some on our website, we'll kind of run down on the differences. Yeah, so to start a route, I can either select a route that's already built by just clicking on it, or I can create a new route by clicking on the chart, select new route, click where I want to go. Once I'm done making the route, hit that green checkbox. And then to activate the route, I can hit the little route tool here, or I can go on and I can click a specific waypoint and I can click activate. So if I've had a route built but I already pass over one of the waypoints, I can activate kind of midway in the chart, or midway in the route rather. And then the other thing that's really useful is this sort of reset cross-track tool. If you're connected to an autopilot and you're off the track line of the route before you hit navigate, you want to use that reset tool, and that basically centers the boat back up on the center of your route. Scott, did that answer your question there? Great. Are there any other questions? Anything you want me to go back over? Yes, Dave, if there is no internet connection, so the synchronization works either through the network or through the cloud. If you're on a closed network on a boat, so you've got access to another TZ iBoat or a Fruno MFD or a Time Zero PC program, yeah, you'll see it in the device list. The only requirement is that they're signed into the same account, or that the Fruno MFD is not registered. So to explain that, let's say your Fruno MFD is on the boat, but it's never been connected to the internet. You'll be able to synchronize your routes with that MFD, provided that you're connected to the Fruno MFD hotspot. So you've turned on hotspot mode on the MFD and you've enabled it to broadcast its own network. We consider that, we'll call it secure-ish. So we'll allow data exchange between those two devices. If that Fruno MFD is on the network, but is connected to your boat's network, so it's not in the Fruno IP address range, then you're going to need to sign that MFD in. And I would always recommend registering and signing those in. And what that sort of prevents is if your buddy has TZ iBoat, your MFD isn't registered, they come onto your boat, they connect to your MFD, they can get the nav data, but they're also going to automatically synchronize with that MFD. So my recommendation is always sign in once. Obviously, you've got to sign in with TZ iBoat to create an account. So if you've got an iPad and a phone, you make a route on your phone, it'll show up on your iPad automatically, regardless of whether you have an internet connection or not.